Kathie J.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Kathie J Show. I'm your host Kathie J, and thank you so much for spending this half hour with us. I'm sorry, but there's a little baby out there that looks forward to hearing me every day. So hello to you, little Peyton. Thank you so much for watching with your mom every day. I love you guys. All right, so we're working hard to bring you so many good topics. We get what you're saying is happening on in your house is what we want to have shows about, everybody. So please go to KathieJShow.com to get any of the shows that you might have missed and keep the conversation going in your own house, okay? So today we're talking about anxiety. So this is a conversation that any household can have because we all are dealing with it, from kids to adults. And a lot of kids are really dealing with it. With COVID-19 and the pandemic, it's just made it so much worse, everybody. So how do you know when your child is really struggling and needs help? Parents often blame themselves, like, oh, what am I doing? Or they just need to get with it and toughen up like I am. No, we're gonna open up the discussion so we can actually get to the heart of it, start the healing. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, our child and family therapist, is here. Thank you so much for being here. This is what you see all day, every day, anxiety.
Yep.
All right, so what is it in kids? Because it's different, right, between kids and adults, or is it?
So the root of it is the same between adults and kids, which is excessive fear and worry that's disproportionate to whatever the situation is that they're saying is causing them stress.
Yes.
So that's the same for kids and adults, but it can manifest or look differently in kids. So for kids, they have things like they might have a hard time separating, they might have nightmares, they might avoid things, very common. They might be even excessively shy. Really, shyness is a type of social anxiety. So, kids who have a hard time with eye contact, going new places. And so we see that sometimes as young kids, and almost like we were talking about before this even started, a lot of times we also see this through the generations.
Yes.
Right? And so you go, oh yeah, I was that way, or my mom was that way, grandma's like that.
Yeah, right.
And
it's
so
just how we are.
It is how we are. And anxiety right now is the #1 most commonly diagnosed psychiatric condition in our country.
Wow.
And it's 50% of the time diagnosed with depression.
Yeah.
And in the world, it's behind depression by just a bit. So it's like depression and anxiety are the two things that we're dealing with the most, but are also really treatable.
Okay, see, yay, that's what I want to hear right
Yes.
there. Okay, so let's talk about the types of anxiety. There is the separation anxiety. What is that?
Yes. So I think we can all imagine separation anxiety. We picture our toddlers going off to preschool, right? And they're clinging onto your
Yes.
leg and they're screaming and they're
Yes.
crying. And so, in the beginning at that point, the teachers might be saying, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. Just say
Just
goodbye.
Say goodbye and walk out.
And walk away,
Right.
they'll be okay. So imagine that happening, but then they're getting bigger and older and longer time, and they still don't want to do that. When they get a little older, it just looks like school avoidance, huge one.
Right.
Right? So school avoidance doesn't show up like, good morning, I'm going to avoid school this morning. It starts off with being like, I have a tummy ache.
Yeah, right. Avoiding to go any
Right.
excuse to not
So-
go to school.
Right, and honestly, most parents, it takes them a while to figure out what's going on because it'll start off as tummy aches.
Right, right.
So then the first call you do, of course, is the pediatrician.
Yeah.
Right, so tummy aches and headaches. But when you see that going on, you start to realize after a while,
There's something
else going on.
Okay, that's really good. Okay.
So that's a big one. So I just want people to know separation anxiety really does just over the years look like a bigger version of what it looked like when they were younger, which is I don't want to leave home. I don't want to leave you. Don't leave me alone. I don't want to walk into a room by myself.
I don't want that as an adult, especially. I don't want my child growing into that kind of a person.
Right.
There's other types of anxiety, and when we come back, we're going to get on that as well. And we're also going to know if your child is actually having trouble with the anxiety and how to help them as well. We'll be right back.
Kathie J.
The Colorado Lottery is an official partner of the Kathie J Show. Colorado Lottery, play on.
Kathie J.
Welcome back to the Kathie J Show, everybody. So how do you know if your child has anxiety? There are certain signs and symptoms that parents look for. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, our favorite child and family therapist, is here. So before we get into the symptoms, there were two other things, types of anxiety. We talked about separation anxiety, which could be parents going to work or them not wanting to leave them. Death is even a separation anxiety. Phobias is the next one.
Yeah, so
What's
there's
that?
specific phobias. So for kids, it's common for needles, big one, getting shots or getting
that
blood
makes
drawn.
sense. Yeah.
And another really big one is around weather. So for parents that are sitting at home going, all summer long, I get phone calls about tornado sirens and windy.
You do?
I do.
parents call you because it's windy.
because it gets really bad.
Why
It
is
gets
that
really
ma-
bad
Why
for
does
kids.
that create anxiety for kids?
So there's weather-related anxiety. It feels really unpredictable, feels big. And so it's sort of like, I think of anxiety as like a huge storm, and then each droplet has its own way that anxiety shows up for each and every one of us.
Okay.
And there's a good amount of kids, particularly here in Colorado, who have a really hard time with super windy days and tornado sirens. And it's get bad where they can't leave the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so there's specific phobias.
Okay.
And then when we continue on, we look at all these other different ways
Yeah.
that kids are showing up with these fears.
Yes.
These excessive fears and worries.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. The third type of anxiety was, oh no, I forgot it. Oh, overachieving. Yes, I'm sorry, producer Mary. Yes.
perfectionist.
Yes, you're right. She feels like
Yes.
she was that when she was a kid. Mary's like, I was an overachiever.
Yes.
Yes.
So when we look at, overachievers, perfectionists, we don't often think about the root of that being anxiety, but it is. So a perfectionist is somebody who says, if I'm not going to be awesome at this, I'm just going to avoid it.
Right.
I'm not going to do it.
Ooh.
So that's the hallmark.
Ooh.
So you have this kid where a lot of times parents will say, I don't understand. They're really
so
so
good.
great. They're so
Yes.
great at all these things, but they won't do blank. And I'm like, oh, that's just because they think that they're not going to be great at it or perfect at it. So then they just avoid it.
Wow.
Becomes an anxiety for them.
Oh, okay. So is anxiety, when you said anxiety, think of it like a storm, and all the droplets are different things that come into, we all attract something different for our anxiety. Is it something that we all just, you have to go through life and have a certain type of anxiety? Is it a loss of control where we let something in and then it starts building inside of us and explodes? How do we even let the anxiety in?
So I think it's really important to understand, of course, worry and fear are natural parts of life.
Yeah.
And so because you have some worry and fear doesn't mean I'm talking about an anxiety disorder.
Okay.
Right? So we are looking at anywhere between sometimes 1 out of 4 kids, 1 out of 5 having some sort of anxiety disorder. So it's a pretty high amount. And so what we're really talking about is it gets in the way of your functioning.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
if you're sitting at home, you're a little worried and anxious and stressed about something, but you can still do the test, you can still go to school, that's not an anxiety disorder.
Okay.
A disorder means I'm avoiding school, I'm not handing in homework because I'm afraid of how it's going to be judged, I don't go to sleepovers, I'm not trying out for that team.
Yeah, you're holding yourself
You're
back
holding
in your
yourself
life
back.
because of this anxiety,
Right,
this
so
fear.
I do want
Okay.
people to know that difference.
Thank you for saying that. And so with kids, the symptoms come up.
Yes.
If your kid starts being restless, you said. That
Yes.
was definitely.
Restless, sleep disturbances, avoidance, physical. So anxiety is very physical. So that's sweaty palms,
Oh,
racing
yeah.
heart, confused head or headache.
Your arms are heavy, knees are weak.
That's
mom's
right.
spaghetti, yeah.
Eminem knows anxiety.
Vomit on your sweater. Yeah, you're
Right. I mean, an actual vomit. I
Yeah.
mean, kids
Oh,
throw up
that's
before
horrible.
things. Those are the physical manifestations of anxiety.
Wow. Okay. So if they have a hard time with a lot, so the symptoms are there. I'm seeing that their palms are sweaty. I'm seeing that that things in the environment freak them out and they don't want to try things.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to get into how I help them.
Yes.
And that's coming up next, everybody.
Kathie J.
Oakwood Homes is an official partner of the Kathie J Show. Oakwood Homes, building happiness.
Kathie J.
Welcome back to the Kathie J Show, everybody. So today we are blessed to have the expert with us, everybody. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler is here talking about kids and anxiety. Anxiety is that's her thing. That's her bag, baby. She
Yep.
knows everything about anxiety, and it's a real battle that a lot of kids have for so many different reasons. And the one thing we can't do as parents is demean it and say that what you have anxiety over is not. That's nothing.
Right.
Get over it. You don't do that.
Right.
There are ways to approach and help your child work through this. Where do we start? How do you help your child face the fears?
Yeah. Well, I love the first thing is you don't want to say things like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. It's natural that comes out of our mouths. But
Yeah.
once we start seeing a pattern, then we start saying, let me talk to you about this. I mean, from a clinical lens, one of the things that we do with anxiety is we look at the thoughts. What are your thoughts? Because all of a sudden you'll see a whole list of irrational thoughts. And then what are the behaviors you do because of those thoughts? And what do we want to correct? So exposing them to whatever is worrying them is an important part of anxiety.
Okay, so you need to get to a safe spot with your kid and just say, tell me what's going on. A lot of times they're not going to talk. How do I point out, I think you're scared of this?
Yeah. Well, you can say things like, I've noticed that every Monday morning you have a headache or you have a stomachache before. I wonder what goes on at school on Monday mornings.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. Oh yeah. Oh, I have Mr. So-and-so and he's, so you know what I mean? You can get to it because you can start to see a pattern.
Okay.
Most of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the times you see a pattern. So first you point out the pattern to them, then you point out to them, here's a thing we haven't talked about is the genetics behind this.
Okay.
Right? So there's a lot of genetic data that says, yes, this runs in families.
Wow.
It doesn't have to, but it's about the way we manage stress.
Yes.
Right? So there's twin studies on this. I mean, there's people separated that grew up in different households on this.
Those kind of studies are fascinating.
They're fascinating.
Yes.
So we see a pretty strong, consistent correlation that we can both, if we were siblings, we can both have the genetics that say we're predisposed to anxiety, but the way that you deal with stress and I deal with stress will be a huge factor, the differentiating factor.
Yes.
Does it get expressed? The gene expression, does it get expressed in you or I?
Wow.
So there is, intergenerational, we call it, kind of anxiety, there's intergenerational trauma. These things get passed down. So a lot of times, I'm sure people right now are literally saying, oh yeah, my mother had anxiety and I had anxiety,
yes,
right?
Right.
So you do want to recognize it, you do want to acknowledge it, you don't want to minimize it, because if you don't deal with it as a kid, it sort of stays with you. It's so treatable, though, Kathie. It's one of the most treatable.
Okay. So treatable. So treatable is start talking to them and then
Right,
praise them. You said praising and helping with how they're
expose
coping.
them. Like you want to expose them, meaning like whatever they're worried about, don't help them avoid it. Help them face it.
Okay.
Right? You might do that in steps. And if you're doing all those things and it's not helping, and it's again getting in the way of their functioning, school, academics, sports, clubs, then you may want to seek professional help. It's usually not super long term.
Okay.
And it is really effective.
All right.
And parents and kids learn actual skills. Deep breathing, huge part of managing anxieties. Can I manage my central nervous system? Deep diaphragmatic breathing, it's called.
Right. Getting calm.
Getting calm.
Right.
Doing some yoga postures, visualizing what stresses you about it, visualizing it going well, taking baby steps. These are all the things that we do and they're really effective.
Okay, so kids that didn't want to go to school for example, you would have them breathe through it, be calm, and walk through it in their head, kind of going into school and having a good experience. Is that kind of what we could do? Like the overachiever mom.
Yep.
She would walk through with your kid like, we're calm, right? Everything's good. You gotta be. Everything's still okay. Like, do you talk like that?
Do we put on that voice?
I feel like you need to.
So instead of saying, this is a really subtle thing, but kids don't like it when we say like, it's okay, everything's okay.
I know, but it's all I want to say.
It's like what you want to say.
Because we're moving fast as parents.
Right, and inside they don't feel okay.
All right,
right?
Dang
so
it.
you just want to say, okay, so what are you thinking and feeling right now? So you're in the front door of the high school, you're walking, what are you thinking and feeling? I'm thinking and feeling that everybody thinks that my outfit looks really stupid. I mean, these are the thoughts.
No, that's
my outfit looks
dead
really
on.
stupid,
Yes.
and nobody's gonna talk to me, I'm not gonna have anybody to sit next to. Okay, so let's breathe, right? Let's breathe really good. Okay, what could you do? Could you look for one friendly face? Imagine yourself looking for one friendly face. Imagine, right?
Yes.
It's really, so when we get to that point, you want some professional help. But what I'm saying is it's not super long term. These are things parents can learn.
Right.
And they can support their kids at home.
Yeah, I want to support them. I definitely want to. My daughter has a fear of going to sleep for some reason.
Yeah.
Like the phobia hits in, and so we've walked through conquering the nightmares, the dreams. That she's got like 6 nightlights, all different versions in her room. Like I don't know how else to get her there, but now I think it's affecting her schoolwork.
Right.
Because so maybe is there something else that's happening? Is it because she's not sleeping? I'm sure it's all going.
Well, it does affect things, right? Because if you have anxiety at night and you're not sleeping well, then you're sleep deprived, then you're irritable the next morning.
Absolutely.
You have a hard time concentrating and focusing. It's a snowball effect. So she's 7 or 8, right? And that's how it affects her. Take someone who's 38, how it affects them? Well, it affects them at work.
Yeah.
They're irritable with their colleagues. They're not getting things done on time. They can't focus and
we
concentrate.
don't want to become those adults,
right?
And I don't want my children to become those kind of adults.
Especially when this is so incredibly treatable through a lot of cognitive behavioral strategies. That's what I'm talking about. And also sometimes with medication.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And sometimes medications can be very, very helpful.
And let's talk about these medications. This is a beautiful part of medications. So these are fidget toys. Mary's daughter has 20 of these. But these fidget toys, these were originally created for kids that were autistic, correct? Are they, from what I learned, or had learning disabilities, they would just sit here and pop these. And when my kid got these, I was like, this is ridiculous. Am I really spending $10 on this thing? But I actually would prefer she did this.
Well, I'm laughing and smiling to shout out to the teachers who are tired of these. So I know they are. But, you know, so this is something that's sensory, right? And it can distract. So if I was nervous right now, maybe I could calm myself by doing this, and then it would distract my mind from saying, oh, what am I nervous about? Oh, what's Kathie going to ask me next? Okay, now I'm taking my mind. So it's a little bit of a mindfulness thing. We can teach kids to be mindful in other ways that are less distracting, less flashy. But this is, I mean, kids clearly are very drawn to these, right? Absolutely. They love them, maybe because of anxiety, maybe just because it's fun, it feels good. But I would say that, you know, having this around is like a Band-Aid. Okay, so sometimes you need a Band-Aid.
You need a Band-Aid just to get through.
But the Band-Aid's not going to necessarily like do the stitches and heal the wound, right?
No,
but
it's not.
It's protective. So, hey, if this helps a kid go on a play date that otherwise would be really scared, but they feel good walking in with these.
I never thought about that.
Great. Walk in, have a whole bunch of these. Play with them. Share them with your friends, because they're not going to realize you're managing your anxiety. So it's like a Band-Aid.
You're so right.
You know, and it can be helpful. But I would say what the key is that this does, that represents, is really mindfulness.
Yes,
getting
Dr.
in the
Cheryl.
moment. Anxiety is about the past and the future. If you can get in the moment, it's very helpful.
All right, everybody. Parents really can make a difference with their kids' anxiety, but sometimes more help is needed. Dr. Cheryl's been hinting about it. When we come back, she's going to tell us about that extra help after the break.
Kathie J.
Ramos Law is an official partner of the Kathie J Show. He's a medical doctor and a lawyer. Ramos Law, what makes us different makes us better.
Kathie J.
Welcome back to the Kathie J Show, everybody. So sometimes parenting an anxious child takes a lot more help in order to get your child better. And since it is something that can be treatable, you want to do what you can to make sure that it doesn't follow them into tweens and adulthood. So sometimes therapy is necessary, even medication. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler is here to talk about that. Yay. Okay, so when should parents be even considering these options?
Yeah, so I think you've tried some things at home. You see that they're not maybe fully engaging the way that you want them to. You see tears, you see physical illness. You go get help, right?
Right.
So the first place, I will say lots of people call their pediatrician first. That's really normal. But sometimes the pediatrician will then refer them to a psychologist, a therapist. And so at that point, we usually start off with, like I was saying, cognitive behavioral therapy. We try these strategies, we see how they're working. If you do that and you go, that's not fully working, you know, then sometimes you pair it with some psychotropic medication is what it's called. You have a psychiatrist. So you go to a psychiatrist, you have them evaluate it. And sometimes the pairing is the combination. It really calms their central nervous system. And then they're able to do all the things that we've been talking about, the strategies, because there's so many strategies.
Yes.
So all of these strategies, when they're calmer, they're able to do them. And so some of these medications are ones that you take daily, and some of them are just even as needed. We haven't talked about an anxiety or a panic attack. But when somebody has one of those, it's really scary.
Yes.
You feel like you can't breathe.
Yes.
Some people feel like they're having a heart attack. So some people have medication for anxiety that they take a constant, and some of them they just have that in case.
Okay, so you say medication in children, the first thing that a lot of parents are thinking of is, how long do they have to be on it? What's what is this medication? Tell me.
Yes. So there are classes of medications, a lot of them for anxiety are benzodiazepines. And so it's something that your doctor really has to talk to you about, make sure it's safe for your kid, but also they're not usually super long-term. Or sometimes, that's one class, there's another class called SSRIs that deal with anxiety and depression. Because again, remember 50% of the time they go hand in hand.
Right.
And it's oftentimes difficult to say, is that depression or anxiety? And so there are also other classes of meds that can deal with both. Those tend to be a little bit longer term that kids are on. But when it comes to kids, like I always say, it just opens the window. They learn how to practice these things, and then you titrate down slowly and see if they do well. And so your genetics. You got to be honest with yourself, right? Families need to be honest.
You do. One quick question before we go: what happens if this is left untreated?
It persists. It
You don't want that,
persists. You
everybody.
don't want that. And
No.
they don't really get to their, their epitome of where they could be doing
Their full
Their
potential.
full potential,
Right, right.
right? And they really don't. And they struggle and suffer in
you don't-
silence often.
Oh, you don't want that for your children. Like, that just hurt my heart thinking
Yeah,
about it,
yeah.
everybody. So to connect with Dr. Ziegler, just go to her website, drcherylziegler.com. She's also got a podcast that you should check out. It's called Dr. Cheryl's Pod Couch. I love it. and she's got it all right there. Like, you did one click and you're right into her world, everybody. You can learn more about it on her website, drcherylziegler.com. So thank you so much for being here. And we only have like 10 seconds
I
left.
know.
So I love you so much.
I know. Thanks for covering this. Again, this is the most common childhood psychiatric condition.
It's most common, everybody. Let's talk to our kids. Thank you. Have a good day.